Hi, and welcome to Foxys Den. Today we thought we'd just take a quick look at one of my Uher 4000 tape recorders, which I thought you might be interested in having a closer look at. As you can see, it takes two 5-inch reels, and here's the front. As you can see, we do have the volume controller here, tone control, the record level, and the input selector switch, which selects between the microphone input, which is on a DIN, a locking DIN plug, and also it also selects the radio phono input. Right, we've got the four speeds on this machine. We have 7.5, which we need to just give that a little twist and push that in. Yeah, there we go. That's 7.5 inches per second. Then we just move that over there and push down into here. We now got 3 3/4 of an inch per second. And then we can now also move it over to here, and there we have 1 7/8 of an inch per second. And finally, pushing it over to here, as it gives us the slowest speed, which is 15/16 of an inch per second. Right, and of course we've got the rewind button here, the start button here, pause, the stop, the record button, and of course the rewind button. Now presumably you'll want to see the insides, so we can soon turn that over and we can have a look. Actually, I should have been prepared actually with a coin actually to undo that with, but I haven't. But always find something I can use to do that job with. There we go. As I say, there's the inside. It doesn't look very exciting at the moment. We have space here for 5 D cells, which fit nicely into those spaces. Also, there's a rechargeable sealed lead acid battery, which actually will fit in to the actual same space. It just fits like so. Well, yeah, I do have to push it down, but I don't want to push that down just at the moment. But that will fit into that space. We've also got the power supply, which is here. Now you'll see that this has the same 2 little contacts in the same position as the rechargeable battery, and as I say, that will then fit into this space as well, enabling you to run the machine from the mains, saving the batteries. Of course, you can also fit the lead acid battery, and whilst that's in place, by plugging this into the accessory socket on the back here, you can also plug that into the mains power supply, therefore running the machine from the mains and recharging the rechargeable battery. And of course, what you really want to see now, as I say, is the innards. So we'll just snap this cover off. These are usually pretty tight to get off, but they do come off carefully. There we go. Right, here we go. Now here we have the insides, the main printed circuit board, and the flywheel for the capstan, and I think you can see the belt here for rewind and fast forward, and the motor is here, which is a double-ended motor which has a pulley both ends, and you'll see that this belt is just a little bit slack, so I probably need to change the belt in there. There are actually 3 belts in there, one on this side which drives the capstan, and the other one which drives the rewind and fast forward, and finally the one that actually is driven from one of the reels, which drives the tape counter on the front. Right, now what we need to do now, as I say, is to get into the printed circuit board. Now, just by slackening off this little screw here, which is what I'm going to do now. You don't need to take it right out, because as I say, if you do take it right out, as I say, it does tend to fall down in there, and you have to shake the machine to try and get the screw back out again. So I generally just leave it in. And now that we've slid that back far enough, we can now lift up the printed circuit board. Now, isn't that neat? Isn't that great? You've got access to both sides, which really helps in servicing. There we go. As I say, we can now turn the machine on its side there like that, so you can have a better look. The long silver thing which you can see along here is the record and play switching, which generally needs the contacts cleaning. It is worth noting that this little C shape here, as I say, fits into this slot here, so you do have to make sure that this is in the correct position for when you put the board back down again, because it's difficult to do that if it's not in the right place. And as I say, if you press the record button, you can see that lever move forward, and now it moves back when you press the stop button. That basically just moves this switch for switching into the record mode. Now, as you can see, it's pretty much original on the inside there. There's nothing been changed or altered, so presumably some of these capacitors, you'll see that there are quite a few tantalum capacitors in there, which will probably have to be replaced. Also this capacitor here, which can give problems as well. And of course we've got the other board here. This is the amplifier board, very basic 3 transistor amplifier. Then of course we've got the speed control board, which controls the speed of the motor. And yes, well, as you see, so there's a fourth board here, which is the equalization board for the various speeds. You can also see that we've got a rather nice elliptical speaker in there, and it does actually give quite a good quality sound to this. This is an extremely heavy machine. As I say, it is actually all die-cast aluminium is the chassis and the case. There's very little plastic in one of these, apart from this plastic carrier for the D cells. As I said, they're extremely well built. I believe that Uher actually were a toy manufacturer when they first started. I think these machines were actually introduced in about 1961. But from the looks of this machine, I'd say this one's a mid-60s, 66, 67, 68, somewhere around about that. And of course, these are of extremely high quality. They're actually, when running at 7.5 inches per second on good tape there and a decent microphone, it is well up to broadcast standards. In fact, the BBC actually used to use quite a lot of these. They generally the BBC ones usually had BBC engraved on the metal casing. And they also had to make a little modification to them as well eventually, because they did find a lot of journalists would get halfway through an interview and the tape would be running out, and they would switch to a lower speed in order to conserve tape and continue with their interview. But this did cause some problems at the station, because all their machines would be running at 7.5. So in the middle of an interview, suddenly it would be running at twice the speed, and you would have kind of Pinky and Perky effect. and usually a rather embarrassed presenter there would, as I say, would quickly tell everyone that there's a slight technical problem and have to leave that interview. So in order to prevent that, the BBC actually put these into the into 7.5 inches per second and actually snipped this knob off from the inside so that the speed couldn't be changed. But you do occasionally find a few of these on eBay when you find this selector switch has been removed, and then you'll know it did actually belong to the BBC. That's if you don't actually spot the BBC logo, which sometimes is engraved along here. It generally wasn't engraved on this because this panel is removable, so you could easily remove it and replace it with another one. So it was engraved along here somewhere, and usually with a number as well, to an internal number for them to use. But there we are. As I say, this is a nice little machine. As I said, they're really nice. I quite like these. I have quite a few of these, and hopefully in the future, in another video or two, we'll be delving into one of these and attempting to fix one. But just before I go, there is one other little problem that these machines tend to have. Yes, it's usually the capacitors, as I say, like all old vintage equipment. As I say, when something gets to around 50 years old or so, capacitors do tend to fail after that. This one has a particular failure, which is the power supply capacitors, which are wired directly across the supply. These are actually underneath the battery compartment, so you do have to take all the screws out and take the battery compartment out in order to get to them. But I do happen to have a spare battery box here. This is one I've rubbed the terminals out of and to fit into another machine. And if I turn it over, you can see those are the capacitors that generally fail. They usually go short circuit. They're directly across the supply rails, and of course it's not a good idea to short circuit one of these. It's usually a bit more catastrophic than shorting these, because these simply just go flat. But there you are. As I say, that's the battery box. And one final thing is, you probably notice this little switch here. As I say, that just disconnects all power from the D-cell connections, and it's operated by putting the rechargeable battery into the casing itself. Like, of course. Right, well, there we go. So I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you'll join me next time. So thanks for watching. Bye-sy daisies.